Hi everyone, and welcome back to 7 Days Inside, EMDR. I'm Kyle Lincoln, a mental health counselor based in Salem, Massachusetts.
And I'm Kellyn.
As a reminder, we've designed this podcast specifically for those who are curious about EMDR and those who may have already begun treatment and are in the stabilization and preparation phases.
In our last episode, we built a foundational understanding of what trauma is. So where do we go next, Kyle?
Today we'll answer a question that I get all the time. What can EMDR actually treat besides PTSD? I recently attended an EMDR conference for counselors with breakout sessions on using EMDR to treat anxiety, childhood attachment issues, depression, borderline personality disorder, grief, dissociative disorders, OCD, even medical conditions like fibromyalgia. While we might not get into the mechanics of each of these, we'll especially focus on how EMDR treatment applies to things rooted in unresolved life issues.
Honestly, I didn't realize that EMDR was used so broadly. So I look forward to learning more about this today. And as we do in each episode, we'll follow our 3-part structure, exploring the main topic, defining an essential EMDR idea, and practicing a new skill.
Today's essential idea is a core skill called dual awareness, and our practical exercise is a self-soothing technique called the butterfly hug.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. Let's begin.
Today's episode is asking, what conditions can EMDR actually treat? It sounds simple, but people often wonder if EMDR can help with what they're experiencing, especially if they don't have PTSD.
Right. Like, I always assumed EMDR was strictly for things like, like soldiers coming back from war or people who have survived really intense situations. I never really thought about it being used for, what did we say? Like, depression, anxiety, or personality disorders.
Yeah, and you're definitely not alone in thinking that. I mean, it's true. EMDR is primarily known and recommended as a first-line treatment for PTSD. Major groups like the World Health Organization and the APA recognize it as highly effective specifically for trauma. I offer clinical supervision to trauma therapists in Ukraine who find EMDR so useful for their clients who are living in an active war zone, facing threats to their and their families' lives. I mean, also, EMDR was first used to treat veterans and people who were active duty. So associating it with what a counselor might call capital T trauma is good and correct. Capital T meaning it meets the DSM PTSD criteria for trauma. But here's the interesting part. EMDR can help with other things too. For example, I use it in my office, treating people with childhood memories of neglect, social anxiety, grief and loss, and things that might be thought of as little t traumas. Clients that don't have a PTSD diagnosis and have never experienced life-threatening circumstances.
Okay, but how does it help with something like anxiety or depression? I don't know. For me, that sounds pretty different from PTSD, doesn't it?
Yeah, great point. It seems like you're asking if anxiety and depression are also rooted in unresolved memories. Is that a fair way to reframe your question?
That's exactly it, yes.
So here's why EMDR can still be effective. EMDR was designed to address unresolved experiences, memories, or moments that your brain hasn't fully processed. Trauma and anxiety can have a lot in common, and anxiety is the first and most prominent everyday feature of PTSD. A lot of times people think anxiety is heritable, like it runs in the family, which is not strictly true. Genes account for something like 30% of it. Anxiety is a learned response that is often helped by resolving the underlying memories that might have fueled anxious responses in the past. Now, depression is a little different in that it is biological, and therefore EMDR is considered an adjacent therapy for depression. It helps with things like negative self-beliefs. Often these can be rooted in unresolved memories. These are things that can often make depression feel worse. But going through EMDR won't take away your brain's mood patterns. That is usually helped with a combination approach, including medication and physical activity too.
So you're saying that even if someone doesn't have a clear trauma story, like something we see in people who have PTSD, they might still have these quote unquote stuck memories and could therefore benefit from EMDR?
Yeah, because sometimes our brains store experiences in ways that keep us stuck. This doesn't always mean having a clear trauma story. It could be anything that still emotionally affects you in ways that don't match your present day reality. I mean, clinically, we see people benefit from EMDR when their current struggles tie back to unresolved past experiences. Maybe that's a good way to put it.
No, yeah, definitely. That makes a lot more sense now, actually. So, EMDR treatment is less about a person's specific diagnosis and more about understanding if your current problems have roots in past experiences that haven't been fully dealt with.
100%. There are some people who focus their research on the body sensations of past experiences, so it's important that we define past experiences broadly.
And how about personality disorders? Can EMDR even be used to help treat clients with that?
Yes, in fact. So let's do a case study. I'll share an example of someone not diagnosed with PTSD, by the way. Let me illustrate this with a heavily adapted story from my practice. I want to tell you about Maggie.
Okay.
This is a client who reached out to me initially not because she identified with trauma in her life, but because she was stuck in an emotional cycle that she couldn't really explain. And Maggie described it this way. She said, I've never really had anything really bad. I've had a pretty normal life, but I don't understand why certain things affect me so hard.
So then in that case, I'm guessing Maggie didn't even think EMDR would apply to her situation.
No. Maggie was hesitant enough about coming to therapy in the first place. I mean, even a little apologetic, like her issues weren't quote unquote big enough. But as we talked more, a clear pattern emerged. Seemingly minor interactions like someone abruptly canceling plans or being slightly impatient could send her into intense anxiety and emotional shutdown. I mean, these reactions weren't just random either. They were consistently triggered by similar situations.
So then why did you choose EMDR for Maggie's situation specifically?
Maggie's reactions were so predictable and automatic, it suggested that these weren't surface level emotions. Her symptoms aligned closely with patterns we often see in personality disorders, particularly emotional sensitivity, intense reactions to perceived rejection, and difficulty regulating emotions. And interestingly, research has recently been done by a psychologist by the name of adjunct, and he's demonstrated that EMDR can effectively treat these types of emotional struggles. It's been particularly helpful for addressing the underlying memories that fuel these emotional reactions and patterns.
Oh, okay. So that's how EMDR treatment is then used to help treat personality disorders. All right. So what happened when you started using EMDR with Maggie? Was it effective?
Okay, so during EMDR, a specific childhood memory came up. So Maggie recalled being a performer. She would do plays during school, and her mother would pick her up from drama rehearsal, and she would roll her eyes whenever Maggie would make a comment about what other people were saying, Maggie, why are you such a drama queen? And maybe her mom was trying to be ironic, but Maggie clearly remembered this having an emotional sting, like her mom was expressing something that she thought her mom engineered to almost pierce her in a unique way. And at that moment, she realized that belief was something like, if I express myself, if I express my feelings, I'm a burden and people pull away from me. It's not just about how severe an event is by some external objective standard, but it's about how the brain stores that memory. So Maggie's brain essentially froze that emotional moment, that drama queen moment, and her sense of shame and the feeling of rejection attached to that. And that created a degree of emotional sensitivity to comments like this. And that's precisely what EMDR aims to address, these memories that haven't been fully processed.
Wow, that's actually incredible that using EMDR therapy, you can pinpoint that specific memory. It was her mom saying this thing to her when she was young, but it really stuck with her and had a lasting effect on her. So,
Mhm.
yeah, so then once you identified that memory, what did EMDR therapy actually look like?
Right, so we activated the memory, helping Maggie briefly recall the feelings connected to the event. Then we introduced BLS, bilateral stimulation, which for somebody might be eye movements or gentle tapping, which allowed Maggie to safely reprocess and finally integrate that stuck memory. And over time, Maggie naturally replaced her old negative belief with healthier adaptive beliefs like my feelings matter and expressing myself doesn't push others away.
So, what happened for Maggie?
Over time, as her brain reprocessed that memory, actually its emotional charge faded. The old belief that her feelings were a burden was naturally replaced by a new, more adaptive one. My feelings are valid, and it's safe to express them. As a result, when things happen in her life that might have been triggering in the past, she no longer spirals. She can just see it for what it is, a change of plans, not personal rejection. And her brain has finally closed a painful loop that's been running for years.
It sounds like that specific skill you mentioned earlier, the ability to stay present while looking back, that was actually the key that made this whole process safe.
Yeah, that skill, dual awareness, is so fundamental to how EMDR works. In fact, our next segment coming up, we'll be exploring it more deeply. As a reminder, in each episode, we're taking a few minutes to highlight one essential concept that helps you prepare for EMDR reprocessing. These are the building blocks of how EMDR works. And today's concept is called dual awareness. It's the skill of being in two places at once, the memory and the present. You're letting a memory come up, but you're also staying grounded in what's true right now.
So you've got one foot in what happened and one foot in the here and now?
Yeah, that's a good summary. So that might sound easy, like, of course I know I'm sitting in this chair remembering something, but when a memory has emotional weight to it, it doesn't always feel like remembering. It can feel like reliving, and that's more like re-experiencing a trauma rather than having a dual awareness.
That kind of sounds like dissociation. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, nice. So you're learning all the right lingo. Yeah, so sometimes trauma memories don't feel like memories. Your heart races, your muscles tighten, your mind goes blank because the brain thinks a threat is happening again. And when that takes over, you're no longer processing, you're dissociating. Dual awareness is what shifts your processing system back into motion. It's the condition that makes healing possible.
So this is kind of like BLS or bilateral stimulation. Like you're being grounded in the present by eye movements or tapping, yet at the same time thinking back to a past experience.
Yeah. So BLS is a perfect example of something you can do in the present to help you stay grounded. And we often introduce people to the idea of dual awareness by practicing BLS. It's awkward at first, but once your brain figures out how to hold on to both things, past and present, it starts to settle, and it's able to start to reprocess. In EMDR, we're doing something similar. One part of you is touching the memory, another part of you is watching from a safe place. I compare the process to watching scenery while riding on a train. You can observe your memories kind of go by like scenery without getting derailed, so to say.
Nice. Okay, so someone might say, this memory feels intense, but I do feel grounded. That second awareness is key. It keeps the brain in the present even while it's working with the past.
Right. So thinking about Maggie, that case study, dual awareness is defined as being able to remember memories of her mom while tapping or doing eye movements in the present.
And that keeps people from getting overwhelmed?
Clients process memories in the presence of a counselor. Sometimes they do get overwhelmed. Sometimes people do associate. And I like to say that dissociation is natural, like an overflow valve built into you. And so if someone gets overwhelmed or loses connection to the present in a session, we pause, right? People do get overwhelmed. But it's all just information. We go back to grounding, breathing, resourcing. And it's important to know that EMDR doesn't force anything. The goal is to make space for something new to happen. And that only happens when both past and present are online.
Yeah, I can see why it's important to learn the emotional regulation techniques early on in EMDR before reprocessing actually begins.
Yeah, that's a good point. And actually, it's a good place to end this segment. So, in the first parts of EMDR therapy, we aren't asking clients to go back into traumatic memories. We're practicing skills that promote dual awareness so that your system can learn how to inhabit the past and the present simultaneously. And that's when reprocessing can begin safely. So, in our next segment, we're going to be introducing one skill called butterfly tapping that will help you reinforce this skill of maintaining dual awareness.
Sounds great. Let's do it. All right, so far we've practiced diaphragmatic breathing, creating a safe, calm mental state, and visualizing the light stream. What are we learning about today?
Okay, so today we're going to try a technique called the butterfly hug. It's a simple tapping process that helps people feel more grounded and calm. And we often use it in EMDR as part of phase 2, and then sometimes throughout when we're reprocessing. I mean, we're building up someone's ability to manage big emotions and stay steady in their body.
Butterfly hug. I don't think I've heard of that one before. Can listeners do this by themselves? Do they need someone else there?
I'll admit the name butterfly hug does sound like it's about hugging someone else, but actually it's a position you take all by yourself. So you cross your forearms over your chest like a self-hug and rest your hands on your shoulders. So that's the butterfly position. And then when holding that posture, you begin gently patting your shoulders left, right, left, right, left, right in a steady position. And that pattern of alternate tapping helps calm the nervous system and shift your body into a more regulated state.
That does sound really relaxing. So it's probably more about the rhythm of the pats then than the actual touch?
Okay, so it's both. This rhythm, the left-right, it activates both sides of the brain through bilateral stimulation. And we use that in EMDR to help people integrate what they're feeling. And when you pair the tapping with kind grounding words, it can help the body feel safe and supported. Okay, so let's walk through it together. As always, if you're listening somewhere safe, go ahead and get comfortable. And now cross your forearms over your chest like you're giving yourself a gentle hug. And place your right hand on your left shoulder, your left hand on your right shoulder. So your fingertips are resting just below your collarbones. Okay, so now start tapping slowly. Left hand, right hand, back and forth. Left, right, left, right, left, right.
Okay, I think I got it.
Okay, good. And if this position doesn't feel comfortable, you can also try tapping your hands on your knees or alternating your fingers on your laps or your fingers on your temples. What matters is that you get that back and forth rhythm. And as you keep the tapping going, listen to these phrases. You can repeat them silently or just notice how your body responds to hearing them. I am safe right now. I am not alone. I am doing the best I can. I am learning to care for myself. I am allowed to feel what I feel. You know, if one of those resonated with you, repeat that in your mind a few times as you continue tapping. Breath in and out. And continue tapping as we add a few more. I can pause. I can rest. I can begin again. Okay, so let's pause there. Let your hands come to stillness and let them fall into your laps or rest at your sides. And let's take one more breath in and out. Okay, there it is.
Wow. That felt really, really easy. Like, I didn't have to work hard to calm my body down. It just started to shift.
Like all on its own. Yeah, that's exactly what we want. So the butterfly hug gives your nervous system something predictable and rhythmic, something to follow when maybe everything else feels a little unsteady. And it's used all over the world, even in crisis zones, because it's portable and simple and it just works.
I can see this practice, this skill, being really helpful when you feel emotionally stirred up, but don't necessarily have words for what's going on. And if you do know what's going on, you can kind of use it to bring yourself down with these encouragements instead of spiraling.
Yeah, absolutely. That's when this tool is at its best. And by adding the affirmations, those statements that your body needs to hear, you're not just calming yourself, you're also practicing self-compassion. You're reminding your nervous system that it's not stuck. And so like all the tools we've practiced so far, this works best if you use it before you need it. Try it once or twice this week, even when you're doing okay, and let your body build that pathway back to calm.
Thanks for being with us today.
If you've made it this far, you've done something important. You've asked not just whether EMDR is for people like you, but whether your patterns and your reactions and your inner world might have a story worth understanding. And I think that kind of curiosity is part of healing. And if you felt even a little bit calmer during that exercise,
Or if it felt harder than you expected,
yeah, that's okay too. It's all part of learning what your nervous system has been holding on to and what it still needs.
all right, so Kyle, what should we look forward to next time?
Next time, we'll walk through what phase 3 looks like in EMDR. After you're ready to work through your memories, you'll learn how to isolate a single memory and frame it for treatment.
Great. If you found this episode helpful, we'd love it if you would share it with a friend or left a review. It really helps others to find us. And as always, we'll include links to mental health resources on the website.
Thanks again for listening to 7 Days Inside EMDR. We'll see you next time.